بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم نحمده ونصلي ونسلم على رسوله الكريم أما بعد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته. So in our previous lessons we had spoken about water, the types of water, what types of water are suitable for wudu, how can a person attain purity with which types of water. We went on to discuss what if water becomes contaminated. We also spoke about impurities and how to go about removing those impurities, how to purify something that has been afflicted by by a physical impurity or by having its substance or body found on a particular item. How do you cleanse that particular item? Today's lesson, we are going to be speaking about wudu and ablution, particularly the legislation of wudu. We will speak about the pillars of wudu and those things that are required for the correctness of wudu. How does a person go about achieving a sound wudu? In the next lesson, we will then speak about the conditions when wudu becomes binding upon a person and other miscellaneous masail, other miscellaneous rulings pertaining to that. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala here in this particular verse that I am about to recite to you explains to us the legislation of wudu. Also to understand that wudu is there to cleanse us from the ritual state of impurity. Just like how when we had spoken about physical impurities and how to cleanse physical impurities, we now learn that when we are ritually impure, then how to cleanse ourselves from such a state. And the legislation for wudu, coming back to that point, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, in Surah Al-Ma'idah, verse 6, that Ya ayyuhal ladhina amanu, O you who believe, إِذَا قُمْتُمْ إِلَى الصَّلَاةِ, when you stand up to perform salah, then before that you should do certain things. And what are they? فَغْسِلُوا وُجُوهَكُمْ, wash your faces. وَأَيْدِيَكُمْ إِلَى الْمَرَافِقِ, and wash your hands up to and including the elbows. وَامْسَحُوا بِرُؤُوسِكُمْ, and you make masah of your heads. And we'll explain what is that later on. وَأَرْجُلَكُمْ إِلَى الْكَعْبَيْنِ, and wash your feet up to and including your ankles. Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam is reported to have said in an authentic hadith narrated and recorded by Imam Bukhari and Imam Muslim rahimahullah ta'ala that لا يقبل الله صلاة أحدكم إذا أحدث حتى يتوضأ, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not accept the salah of any one of you until he does not perform wudu. Literally, wudu is translated as al-husnu wa nadafa. It literally means beautification and cleanliness. But in terms of the Sharia, as we have mentioned previously, there are certain words that have a more technical definition to it. So wudu basically refers to taharatun ma'iyyatun mushtamilatun ala ghusli al-wajhi wal-yadayn wal-rijlayn wa mashi al-ra'si. That it is water purification, purification by means of water that comprises of washing the face, washing the arms, washing the feet, and making masah of the head. And لا تجوز الصلاة إلا بالوضوء. Salah is not accepted, it is not permissible to perform salah without having made wudu, ablution. ولا تجوز مس المصحف الشريف إلا بالوضوء. It is not permissible to touch the Quran Kareem, the mushaf of the Quran Kareem. It is not permissible to touch it unless you are in the state of wudu. And الذي واظب على الوضوء استحق الثواب ورفع الدرجات في الآخرة. A person who is persistent upon the performance of wudu, he will become entitled to a great reward in the hereafter, as well as his state is being raised in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as well in the hereafter. So it's something that's very great, it has a lot of spiritual benefits, this aspect of wudu. We should try to all the time be in the state of wudu. Many people, you would find that they have this good quality. Whenever their wudu breaks, immediately they will perform wudu. Others, they don't travel except that they are in the state of wudu. You never know when you need to stop for salah and there's no wudu facilities. You don't know when you just feel like taking out the Quran and reading a couple of pages, but now you don't have wudu and there's no place to make wudu. So like that, we should always try and keep ourselves in the state of wudu. It's a blessed state to be in. I'm sure nobody here would want to pass away in the state in a state of ritual impurity. You want your soul to be extracted and be taken to its next stage, its next phase, where the body, it leaves the body where the body is in a ritual state of purity. So that's what we want, respective friends, and we should be persistent upon being in the state of wudu. Secondly, we speak about the arkanul wudu, the pillars of wudu, those things that are necessary for the validity of wudu. The arkanul wudu arba'atun wa hiya fara'iduhu wa hiya fara'iduhu. The pillars of wudu are four, and they are the four compulsory actions of wudu as well. Number one, it is ghaslul wajhi marratan, to wash the face once. Number two would be ghaslul yadaini ma'al mirfaqaini marratan, to wash the arms up to and including the elbows. Many people, they would wash their arms, but their elbows are dry. This compromises the validity of the validity of their wudu. So to do this once, that is compulsory. Then mashu rubu'i ra'si, to make masah of a quarter of the head. And now what is the masah of the head? It is to basically pass a wet hand over the head. That is what is referred to as masah of the head. So to make masah of at least a quarter of the head, that is fard, that is compulsory, that is necessary for the validity of wudu as well. And lastly, غسل الرجلين مع الكعبين مرة, to wash the feet up to and including the ankles once, that is compulsory. Now we have what is compulsory in wudu, we have the sunnah method of wudu, and then we have the mustahab acts of wudu as well. What's the difference between all of this? So the fara'id, the four that we have just mentioned, that is the bare minimum for a valid wudu. But more than that, we try and perform a sunnah wudu, and we're going to learn what a sunnah wudu entails later on. But this is just the bare minimum requirements a person should do to say, okay, if I've done this, I washed my face once, from obviously from the top of the forehead to the bottom of the chin, from one earlobe to the other earlobe. I washed my face thoroughly, completely, no, not a spot dry. I washed by my eyes. I washed in between, earlobe to the other earlobe. I washed my nose thoroughly, the outsides and all of that. So we'll say that, okay, if the face was washed once, that is one out of four. Number two, a person washes their arms up to including the elbows. That's the second one. Third one, must of at least a quarter of the head. And lastly, the feet up to the ankles. Do all of this once. That's the bare minimum requirement. You have a valid wudu in place, but not the ideal. Not the ideal. The bare minimum we generally to take to when there's a shortage of water, not enough water, or a person is in some sort of danger, and if you've got to make wudu quickly, or perhaps the time is going where the salah time is about to expire, and a person can, if they're going to make the full sunnah ideal wudu, then obviously they are going to miss the salah from its time frame. Then in that case, a person can just stick to the bare minimum wudu and go and perform that salah quickly before the time ends. So these are just the bare minimum requirements. We are going to touch on a full sunnah wudu later on. Part of the conditions that are required for the validity of wudu is that number one, the water should reach the parts that are supposed to be washed, that is necessary to be washed. So we spoke about the hands, or the face, the hands, masa of the head, and the feet, up to including the ankles. Water should reach these places. Number two, there shouldn't be any barrier that would prevent water from reaching those particular places. For example, if we know the arms have to be washed and the person has a thick layer of paint because they were doing a paint job somewhere, now that if that paint is not permeable and water cannot pass through there and reach the skin, that will compromise the validity of a person's wudu. So there shouldn't be any barrier that prevents the water from reaching the skin. And then lastly, ألا يوجد شيء من الأشياء التي تبطل الوضوء, is that while making wudu, that nothing should be found that breaks the wudu, contrary to the wudu. For instance, we know that flowing blood would break the wudu. So a person's got a cut on their hand, and now they're performing wudu, and he's just carrying on bleeding, and they continue and perform the wudu. That's not acceptable. You got to wait for that bleeding to stop. Once the bleeding stops, then now you perform your wudu. So at the time of performing wudu, there shouldn't be anything that goes against the validity of wudu, something that nullifies and breaks the wudu. So we'll stop here. We'll leave it at that. Inshallah, in our next lesson, we'll just speak about when a person would be required to perform wudu and also other miscellaneous masail And after that, in the following lesson, we will then speak about the ideal wudu, the sunnah wudu. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant us the tawfiq and the understanding. This fiqh lesson has been brought to you by Muslim Online. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.